What came next would test every assumption I'd made about reasonable requests and basic human decency. The break request that broke everything. When Tessa finally spoke, her words hit like a freight train carrying a cargo of pure audacity. She wanted a break to explore things with Dylan, but not a real break, more like a relationship pause button that I could press whenever she finished shopping around and decided what she actually wanted. The mental gymnastics required to think this was reasonable would have impressed Olympic judges. She needed space to figure out her feelings about Dylan before committing to marriage with me, because apparently 4 years together hadn't been enough time to determine whether I was the right person for her. Imagine your partner asking permission to cheat. It was that wild. Her delivery was so polished, it was obvious she'd been practicing this speech for days, probably in front of the bathroom mirror like she was auditioning for a daytime soap opera. She had all her talking points ready, complete with emotional pauses and carefully chosen words designed to make her betrayal sound like personal growth. The way she emphasized needing to be completely honest with herself and with me made it sound like she was doing us both a favor by requesting permission to cheat with extra steps. Being someone's backup plan is about as flattering as being compared to a spare tire. Sure, spare tires are useful when you're stuck on the side of the road, but nobody gets excited about using one. Nobody brags about their spare tire or shows it off to their friends. It's just there, waiting patiently in the trunk, ready to serve its purpose when the preferred option fails. That's exactly what Tessa was asking me to be, her relationship spare tire, available whenever Dylan inevitably disappointed her again. The logic behind needing to date other people to appreciate what you have is like saying you need to eat garbage to appreciate good food. If you don't already know the value of what's on your plate, maybe the problem isn't your palate, maybe the problem is you're not hungry for what you're being served. Tessa claimed she needed this comparison to be sure about our relationship, as if 4 years of daily life together hadn't provided enough data points for evaluation. The conversation devolved into absurd territory when she started explaining how this break would actually strengthen our relationship in the long run. Taking time apart to explore other connections would help her return to me with complete certainty about our future together. She was essentially asking me to wait while she conducted a scientific experiment to determine whether the grass was greener on Dylan's side of the fence, with the promise that she'd probably come back once she finished her research. Her favorite phrase during this disaster of a conversation was, "It's not like that," which she deployed whenever I pointed out that what she was describing sounded exactly like cheating with a permission slip. It's not like she wanted to sleep with Dylan, she just wanted to spend time with him without me around to see what developed naturally. It's like she was choosing him over me. She just needed to make sure she wasn't missing out on something better before settling down. Every "it's not like that" made it clear that it was exactly like that. The entitlement required to ask someone to wait while you shop around for better options takes a special kind of confidence that borders on delusion. She wasn't just asking me to pause our relationship, she was asking me to suspend my entire life while she figured out whether I was good enough to marry. The assumption that I would sit quietly on the bench while she played the field showed a breathtaking lack of respect for my feelings, my time, and my dignity as a human being. What made the whole situation even more surreal was how she presented it as a temporary arrangement, like she was asking to borrow my car for the weekend rather than requesting permission to emotionally destroy our relationship. She had timelines and conditions, suggesting we could revisit our engagement in a few months after she'd had adequate time to explore her Dylan situation. The casualness with which she discussed dismantling our future was almost as insulting as the request itself. She tried to frame the whole thing as being fair to both of us, claiming she didn't want to enter marriage with any regrets or unresolved feelings. But fairness would have involved having these Dylan feelings before accepting my proposal, not after planning our wedding and letting me believe we were building a future together. Fair would have been breaking up with me cleanly rather than asking me to participate in my own romantic humiliation. The conversation continued with her, explaining how this arrangement would benefit me too, giving me time to think about whether I really wanted to marry someone who needed to date other people to be sure about our relationship. She presented my inevitable hurt and anger as evidence that maybe I wasn't as committed as I claimed to be, turning my natural reaction to betrayal into proof that her plan was necessary for both of us. By the end of her presentation, the answer to her request had become crystal clear without me needing to say much of anything. Some relationship proposals are so outrageous they respond to themselves, revealing exactly what kind of person would make such demands and exactly what they think of their partner. When someone asks you to be their backup plan while they pursue someone else, they've already told you everything you need to know about where you stand in their priorities. What happened next probably wasn't what she expected from someone who'd just been asked to wait on the sidelines while their fiancé explored other options. The chess master's response. My response was so calm it could have been prescribed as a sedative. Tessa had clearly prepared for a massive fight, probably rehearsing her defensive arguments and emotional manipulation tactics for days. She was ready for tears, accusations, and dramatic declarations about our relationship. What she got instead was me nodding thoughtfully, like she'd just asked my opinion about changing our internet provider. The confusion on her face was absolutely priceless. Chess grandmaster style, because petty relationship wars deserve an equal parts strategic exit. Every instinct in my body wanted to scream about the insanity of her request, to point out the obvious flaws in her logic, to demand answers about when exactly she'd lost her mind. Instead, I channeled my inner chess player and focused on the bigger picture. She wanted to play games with our relationship, so I decided to play games too, just not the ones she expected. Not reacting dramatically forces the other person to confront the actual content of what they're saying rather than getting distracted by your emotional response. When someone drops a relationship bomb and you don't explode, they're left sitting there with their own words hanging in the air, sounding exactly as ridiculous as they actually are. Tessa kept waiting for me to interrupt her with outrage, but my silence made every sentence she spoke sound worse than the last. The poker face I maintained during her presentation was a masterpiece of strategic self-control. I treated her request like a business proposal that needed careful consideration rather than an emotional betrayal that demanded immediate reaction. This approach completely threw off her game plan because she'd clearly expected our conversation to devolve into a shouting match where she could paint me as the unreasonable one for not understanding her need for exploration and self-discovery. Here's where the research gets interesting. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I simply agreed. Agreeing to unreasonable requests can be the ultimate power move because it gives people exactly what they think they want while forcing them to face the consequences of their choices. When someone asks for something outrageous, they're usually expecting resistance that allows them to negotiate down to something slightly less outrageous. By accepting her proposal without argument, I eliminated her ability to moderate her position or claim I was being inflexible. The master plan brewing behind my calm exterior was beautiful in its simplicity. She wanted a break to explore her options, so I would give her all the exploration time in the world. She wanted space to figure out her feelings, so I would provide her with more space than she ever imagined possible. She wanted freedom from our relationship constraints, so I would free her completely and permanently from any obligation to consider my feelings about anything ever again. Giving people exactly what they ask for and watching them panic is one of life's most satisfying experiences. Tessa wanted the freedom to date Dylan without technically cheating, so I agreed she should have that freedom. She wanted time to figure out her feelings without pressure from me, so I suggested she take all the time she needed. She wanted to explore what might have been with her ex, so I encouraged her to explore thoroughly and completely. The conversation became increasingly surreal as I continued agreeing with her points while she grew more uncomfortable with my responses. When she mentioned needing space, I suggested she might need more space than she initially thought. When she talked about taking time to figure things out, I recommended taking whatever time necessary to be completely certain about her decision. My enthusiasm for her plan clearly wasn't what she expected. She kept trying to reassure me that this break wouldn't necessarily mean the end of our relationship, that we could revisit our engagement after she'd resolved her Dylan situation. I nodded along supportively, telling her that sounded like a reasonable approach, while internally calculating how quickly I could eliminate every trace of our shared life before she had time to change her mind about anything. My calm acceptance also prevented her from using my emotional reaction as justification for her behavior. She couldn't claim I was controlling or unsupportive when I was literally encouraging her to follow her heart wherever it led. She couldn't paint me as the bad guy for not respecting her needs when I was actively helping her meet those needs in the most thorough way possible. The mini payoff of this strategic approach became clear as the conversation wound down. Tessa had gotten everything she asked for without any of the resistance she prepared to overcome. She looked genuinely unsettled by how smoothly everything had gone, like someone who'd prepared for war and found themselves in an empty battlefield. Sometimes the best response to manipulation is complete cooperation, especially when you're already 3 steps ahead of the game. What Tessa didn't realize during her carefully planned relationship exit speech was that she'd made one crucial assumption that was about to make her strategic maneuvering look absolutely ridiculous. Operation House Sale and Disappearing Act. The house we'd been living in for 2 years, the one she decorated with her Pinterest boards and filled with her graphic design equipment, was entirely in my name. Turns out the deed was all me. Oops, for Tessa. Not joint ownership, not a rental agreement with both our signatures, just my name on the mortgage and every legal document that mattered. Her assumption she had some claim to our shared domestic paradise was about to become the most expensive mistake of her dating career. Real estate revenge is a dish best served immediately, and I wasted no time getting that house listed for sale. The morning after our kitchen conversation, while Tessa was probably texting Dylan about her newfound freedom, I was on the phone with a realtor who specialized in quick sales. She had the listing live by noon with professional photos that made our place look like a magazine spread. The housing market was hot, and properties in our neighborhood were moving faster than concert tickets. Life can change direction with startling speed when you finally stop being a passive participant in your own story. One day, you're planning a wedding and debating centerpiece colors. The next day, you're interviewing real estate agents and researching moving companies. The transformation from relationship victim to strategic mastermind happened so quickly it gave me whiplash, but the good kind that comes from finally taking control. Packing up someone else's belongings is like being Marie Kondo for people instead of possessions, deciding what sparks joy and what needs to disappear from your life permanently. Tessa's stuff was scattered throughout our house, like evidence of a relationship that had exploded rather than ended cleanly. Her art supplies claimed half the dining room table. Her clothes had invaded my closet, and her collection of decorative pillows had transformed our couch into something that belonged in a home goods store. Hiring professional movers to handle the delivery was the kind of efficiency that would make a corporate CEO proud. I found a company that specialized in delicate relocations. Then they showed up with boxes, bubble wrap, and careful attention to detail. These guys were so professional, they made packing up a failed relationship look like a high-end moving service commercial. They wrapped Tessa's artwork like it was headed to a gallery, boxed her clothes like designer pieces, and loaded everything with the sort of care that suggested they'd handled plenty of similar situations before. The crew left a simple note with the final delivery. Here's your stuff. Good luck. Professional, efficient, and somehow perfectly summarized the entire situation without any unnecessary drama or explanation. The strategic removal of relationship artifacts from our shared space became a fascinating exercise in domestic archaeology. Every item told a story about our 4 years together, from coffee mugs we bought on weekend trips to throw blankets that had witnessed countless movie nights. I found myself categorizing objects by their emotional significance and practical value, keeping things that served a purpose and boxing up everything that only served as reminders. Live, laugh, love signs and decorative throw pillows apparently multiply like rabbits when you're not paying attention to your home's aesthetic evolution. Tessa had gradually transformed our space from a functional bachelor pad into something that looked like it belonged in a lifestyle blog about cozy living. The sheer volume of decorative objects that served no purpose beyond looking cute was staggering, and packing them all revealed just how much of our shared space had been dedicated to her vision of domestic bliss. My dining room became command central for Operation Fresh Start, with boxes labeled by category and destination. Tessa's design equipment went into containers marked for her new address. Her personal items got packed with appropriate care, and our shared purchases got divided with business-like efficiency. I kept the coffee maker because I'd bought it, donated the decorative vases because they'd never made sense anyway, and sold the furniture that felt too coupley for my new single life. The house started looking like a blank canvas instead of a museum of relationship failure, which was exactly the transformation I needed. Empty walls and cleared surfaces created possibilities instead of reminders. The space that had felt cramped and emotionally loaded during our final weeks together suddenly felt open and full of potential. Removing the physical evidence of our shared life made room for imagining what my independent life might look like. Taking control of your environment really does help you take control of your life, especially when that environment has been invaded by someone else's decisions and decorating choices. House felt like mine again, once all traces of our shared domestic experiment had been professionally removed and strategically relocated. Every empty surface and cleared corner represented a fresh start, a clean slate, and the beginning of a life where I got to make all the decisions about throw pillows and wall art. The whole operation took 3 hours and cost less than a fancy dinner, which seemed like a bargain for professional relationship cleanup services. And just like that, her Pinterest empire was boxed up and on its way out.